Yeah, Orpheus's super, which is, how do you explain all this to a Zoomer who is interested in getting into WoW Lamau? Basically,
slowly,
you're fucked. Don't even think about this shit.
No, I would completely disagree. I think it's no harder than most other games.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
When Dragonflight is the game that you're playing, it's going to be a lot better than right now. Not exactly to explain all these things about class identity versus spec identity, or, do I be a paladin? Do I do this? Do I do that? Less that, and more like, if you were trying to get into WoW right now, then we'd be talking about, okay, you've got to select your covenant. Which covenant's best for the thing that you want to do? Do you want to select a covenant that's not best because you prefer it? Then you've got to go and get your conduits. Now, don't worry, they may drop from bosses, but you don't need to worry about them because they've almost been deprecated. And, of course, that means whenever you get 10,000 Cosmic Flux, you can then get an item that gets you all of your conduits. Fantastic. So our conduits are done. Our soulbinds are done. Soulbinds, don't think about them. Just look at a guide on the internet. Fine. Okay. You know what I mean, right? It's like all the layers of stuff makes it really hard to get into. I think once it hits Dragonflight, though, it's just going to be, I'm a paladin. For the paladin example, it's like, what role do I want to do? Okay, I'll poke around the talent tree. Maybe I'll look at a quick guide. Anything else I need is just gear. And then it's kind of right back to the game being, I think, more approachable and with less layers of bullshit. Because, think about a new player who hasn't followed the development of Shadowlands from the start. Imagine they just, for some crazy reason, they started playing Shadowlands literally right now. And they look at it and they're like, what are all of these systems? And then an experienced player's like, don't worry, there's catch up for all of them. And then they're like, everything's important, but it's all been sped up, so it doesn't matter, but it does matter. What do I do? I'm confused. Which I think is the big fucking cautionary tale in don't make your game completely impenetrable. I guess unless you're a really in-depth RPG, which is, kind of...
No. I'm going to come from the approach of make your game as impenetrable as possible, and then it actually matters and has spirit. Don't oversimplify your game.
Oh yeah,
from a general perspective.
Don't
try to make sure it actually exists and has meaning and has point, and people can have actual depth to it, both depth mechanically and I guess technically.
Okay, there's a word that helps us here. Yep. Convoluted.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
Give it all of the depth and all that good shit. Just don't make it really convoluted. And I think where WoW gets convoluted and hard to approach is you see soulbinds, and you see renown, and you see conduits, and maybe you go and try to get all those things. But an experienced player says, oh yeah, no, we didn't like those 6 to 12 months ago, so actually Blizzard added this, and this, which mean that you can rapidly catch up in that. And then to that new player, it's like, well, that's really convoluted. I didn't know about that. Which I guess is the problem of having to... I mean, what's that ship, that Spanish galleon, that sank off the north coast of Northern Ireland? So the story goes, and it was basically held together with, not that it has sellotape, but it was basically held together with sellotape at the end. It's like that Shadowlands and its systems.
I can't remember what you were talking about, but yeah.
And I guess that makes it this whole big convoluted mess for a newer game. Even getting a legendary.
Yeah.
It would be so easy for a new player to end up with a bag full of legendary powers and not really know where to go or what to do. It's probably possible.
It's very much one of those things that it's always been like that, and a lot of games are like that, right?
Oh yeah.
Where even I'm trying to think of a game that's not like that. But every game now relies on fandoms to kind of do the heavy lifting for them to explain things, because you can't just kind of go, hey, here it is. Here's all the information you need, because that's developer effort. Whereas if they Google it because they care, then you're going to have a self-selection for more dedicated players, which is probably a good idea overall. Maybe, who knows? Mm-hmm. But then that gets to it is just really, really bad for World of Warcraft compared to anything else, because there is that kind of constant going of it, and the cultural pressure inside World of Warcraft makes that way worse.
Yeah,
because you're sitting there playing Warframe and you're doing solo stuff, so no one's going to fucking rage at you for not really having the ideal build. then there's nothing you could do there in World of Warcraft. You join a Mythic Plus and you're like, hello, I just started playing in BFA. I don't know what Grimreal Depot is. I don't know, this boss isn't very obvious to me, and I'm doing it in Mythic 0, so I figured I could do it blind because I don't know where it is in the dungeon journal because the dungeons just show me Shadowlands. Grimreal? Is this an old dungeon? I don't know what's going on here. Because you can't reasonably expect people to go look around old stuff.
Yeah.
For that, you need to direct them to it. And they're like, well, okay, well, and then someone gets flamed for not knowing the mechanics. And you're like, well, fuck, that's a bad experience. Which means that basically they should fix all of those problems. And that is, let's say, there's two approaches to that. There's the approach of, hey, we've stripped all of the complexity out, all of the needless complexity out, or consolidated it, so here's all your effects now. If something happens, if there's a buff that you don't understand, it'll be in your talent tree or your spellbook, as opposed to it's in your soulbind. Like the amount of times where I've had what do you call it? The amount of times I've had Mechanicos appear, or Mechanicos is the mechanic, and then the robot that appears, can't remember his name. And they're like, oh yeah, is that mine or is that someone else's? Oh no, that's mine because I'm proud of it. Okay. Like, when did that happen? When does it happen? Why does it happen? I know, but I don't know because I'm not focusing on it because it's happening. And it's like, well, where do I go for that? Oh, it's this mini-map button. And then it's soulbind. And then it's the bottom. It's not in my spellbook. It's fucking nowhere.
And the thing there is, like, a game like Destiny may still be mega confusing. And, like, I remember us jumping into that.
I fucking hate Destiny for that. It's the worst.
But in a way, at least some of it's, like, UX and stuff feels modern. Whereas at least in WoW, it's like, oh, it's hidden in a minimap button. Which to some people, well, yeah. It's that thing that happens with a game that, you know, it has its fandom and it keeps on developing with there being that developer-player relationship where, you know, there's general game design knowledge and you just kind of go off in your own fork because that's just the way it's just the way things are being made. And that's a natural thing. And in many ways, that means a game can be super tailored to its audience, but there's downsides. I think in Shadowlands and maybe a little bit in the past too, it just got like too convoluted for no good reason. And that's why I think Dragonflight, well, new expansions are always a way to wipe that slate clean.
Yeah.
And by not going gigabar power, I think it'll be a cleaner slate than we've had in a very long time. And that should be good. It means that this will be a good time to start WoW fresh, not feel completely gimped by it.
Yeah.
And there's even some nice things too, like Mythic Plus. Because the second season of Mythic Plus will be all new dungeons that people haven't, excessively routed and practiced in the first season.
Yeah,
that sort of thing will be nice.
I would argue that comes at the counterpoint of the first 4 dungeons being ones that people will be familiar with or not familiar with, because there's 4 each season.
Well, in this case, they're ones that have not been in M+ before.
Yeah, but they're still available and people kind of know them, which puts a little bit.
There'll be a bit,
and then it'll be the same in the second season as well. It'll be like, oh, I only know only half of these dungeons are new. What the fuck's going on? Which is nitpicking on something that I genuinely think is pretty good overall, but it's that really awkward thing of like, it's like, as Deputy says, so how much research is considered a reasonable amount that we should expect new MMO players to do on their own? And that's a very different thing. That's a very kind of complicated question to ask, because it's like, how much of it is Blizzard's fault that there's no new player stuff? Even, I haven't watched them yet I'm trying to maybe get a critique of them to sort of answer this question, because FF14 had their starter guides recently, and people have been talking about those a little bit. And I think those are pretty weak overall. I can't remember. I think someone complained that they don't tell healers to DPS at all. Whereas that's how the game is designed.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a massive problem across all of these games of like no one actually sitting down and going, hey players, here's what we expect of you. And that's really, really difficult. There's a search bar in your journal in the achievement system. How many players know about that? Yeah, Netstalker, I found it because I was like, oh yeah, Grimreal. How do you get to Grimreal, the dungeon journal, if you don't know what you're doing? Oh, dungeons, warlords? Because how are you supposed to know it's a warlords if you're a new player?
Yeah.
But then there is a search feature. You can't type Grimreal, it does show up. I'm like, oh, I fucking didn't know that. because it's a tiny little search bar.
I guess
But,
I
Yeah.
don't have to be confusing. Orpha said Destiny's consequences have been a disaster for modern gaming. Oh boy. I mean, is it Destiny's consequences? Is it Borderlands in its consequences? Is it now Diablo 1 in its I'm taking the piss a little bit.
Diablo is the seed.
Yeah.
Maybe someone should have come in with the shears at some point during the growth of it, but it certainly is really grim. I think there's just something about there's a whole big thing of, because I'm even thinking of like FF mechanics that are completely the only way you'll find out why you do a thing based on community advice is to ask them. So say, I'll use an example of, you're supposed to use your cooldown so many GCDs in to a fight with your opener in FF, and that's because of raid CDs, because that's when everyone kind of agreed, is sort of just gently agreed this is the best time to use them, because then everyone gets the most maximum damage out. You kind of swap that based on what static you're in, if people have different ideas or you're running different comps and stuff, but that's like the safe one. And fucking figuring that out is just a complete labyrinth of what guide is written that tells me that.
Yeah.
And then why is this community concept that the game is built around, that the game is clearly designed around, because that's why they've put raid CDs there. That's why they've changed Mug and Trick Attack for Ninja back in 6.1. They did that because there was that society thing, and or the cultural thing, and that's why it's designed. So they're like, well, whose fault is it that shit's crazy? Is it up to the developers to write extensive tutorials and keep on top of that with the resource? I would say yes. I would say Blizzard should put in I mean, it can't really be more than one person to write something, right? Especially full time. I mean, I would nearly be fucking willing to do it if they handed me a check, like, just write a comprehensive guide for players on all of the core concepts of literally how to play this game. Because there's even like small things that are just so second nature to people that you have to pick up.
Yeah, we don't
but
even
it's
know
impossible
that we
to
know them.
tutorialize. Yeah, that's the important part. You don't know you know it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain. Even things like whenever I'm sitting, whenever I'm sitting in a dungeon and I'm interrupting stuff and no one else is, I'm like, is it laziness? Do they not know? Do they not understand? Do they not care? And it's just like me going, that is why I like playing Prop Pala, because I have Avengers Shield and I can just deal with that fucking moron stands and shit, I can heal him. That fucking rogue hasn't bound kick, I can Avengers Shield.
This is the best experience. I'm Disc. I haven't even set up click casting yet, so it's a disaster and it's terrible, but it's a Mythic +2, so none of my healing matters anyway. Yeah. And you're just fucking word of glorying people or whatever, so nobody's dying.
Yeah.
Nobody's interrupting. You're basically just losing your fucking mind for the entire of a lower Gara run.
Yeah.
And I'm just there being like, I could be stressed. Or I could say, I don't give a shit anymore. I've checked out. Listen to this cool harpsichord. Oh, look, it's morose. So I'm there just having my best life as a fucking moron while you're just getting fucking pumped up and up and up and up and up. But at least you had your Avenger Shield. So you had control over it. And hey, I guess that's the Paladin fantasy.
Yeah, it is very much like
just
a one-man
you and a bunch
band,
of heathens.
like, more or less, yeah. Yeah, just fine. I'll put all these fucking god deniers on my back and sort them out. All these fucking... Basically, you know what? When the light bound to come, I'll join them. Fuck all these players. Fuck all of them.
There you go.
Yeah.